This is Homeschool 101, a collaboration between ABS Television and the Ministry of Education. Stay attentive and attempt all activities. And now, today's lesson.
Good day, everyone. My name is Tanya Joseph, better known as Miss Joseph, and I am a biology teacher in the government system. I teach 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and today we are going to be looking at the topic genetics. Genetics makes up everything that we are. We're going to be looking at the behind the scenes of what we are, who we are, and why we act the way that we act, why we have certain traits, why we're able to roll our tongue, why we are tall and why we are maybe short, why our earlobes are fixed, which means that they're almost attached to our face, or why they are free. So genetics is basically what makes us who we are. And we're going to be delving into the topic, and we're going to be focusing on a small section of genetics today. All right. So this is a couple. As you can see, they're happy together. They have their love balloon. We get everything that we are from our parents. Our moms and our dads are the ones that give us the traits that we possess. And so here are two married couple. Both of them are tall. However, they produced their first child, and their first child is short. But how is that actually possible? That both of them are tall, however, they're producing a child that's actually 27 years of age, and he is short. Now, what we want to remember during the class today is that we're going to be looking at a few things. We're going to be able to differentiate between genotype and phenotype. We're going to be able to differentiate between the homozygous and heterozygous traits, and also the dominant and recessive alleles that we possess in our genotype or in our DNA. So we're going to be using genetics today to try and figure out how it is that this man and this woman, though they are tall, they're still producing a child that is short. And that is going to be the question that we're going to be able to answer at the end of the lesson today. Now, when we do genetics, there are certain key concepts, key terms that are very important in understanding how genetics actually work. All right, so now we're going to be looking at some terms that are very important in the whole explanation of how genetics actually work. And we're going to watch a short video, very short. We're going to be looking at three groups of terms and how they are relatable in genetics.
Is the outward appearance or characteristics of the organism depending upon genes. So the phenotype for the red hair gene is actually having red hair. The genotype is the set of genes in our DNA which are responsible for the phenotype.
All right, so genotype and phenotype. Those two they go hand in hand. Think about building a house. First thing that has to be done is the plan. The plan for the house, which consists of a whole bunch of drawings on a piece of paper. And those plans are what tell the contractor how the house is going to look. So when the contractor has completed the entire process, and then we drive by the house, it looks lovely, lovely. That would be the phenotype. So whatever we are able to see on the outside, that would be the phenotype, and the genotype would be the genetic markers or the genetic information that is telling our bodies that this is how it should be in the physical. And we're going to move on.
Alternative forms of a given gene are called alleles. When an individual has two of the same allele, so both coding for red hair, they are homozygous. Both genes are identical. Whereas if one allele codes for red hair and the other for brown hair, they are heterozygous. Two different forms of the same gene are present.
All right, so as we saw in the video, there are homozygous and heterozygous types of traits. Remember, the alleles are different types or types of the genes, and the genes are the actual characteristics that we are going to be inheriting. All right, homozygous means that both alleles are the same, and heterozygous means that the alleles are different. Most of the time, the genotype is written with letters, and the phenotype are the ones that are comprising of words and or phrases. So let's continue.
When two different alleles are present, so are heterozygous, one allele will be dominant. This allele will influence the phenotype. So brown hair is dominant over red hair, so the offspring is more likely to have brown hair. So in this example, the red hair allele is recessive. This means the gene is not expressed in the phenotype. Recessive genes are only expressed when the other gene is also the recessive form, so it needs to be homozygous, both carrying the red hair allele. And finally, the phenotype is the outward.
All right, so the last two terms are dominant and recessive. Now, what do these things mean? Dominant alleles are those alleles that are expressed in the phenotype of an individual. So you would see the particular character trait. And recessive alleles are those that are only expressed when there are two recessive alleles present, as seen in the video. All right, so what we're going to be doing now, we're going to have a little activity where we're going to be illustrating or mimicking genetic inheritance of traits. Now remember, we began with the two tall parents producing a short individual. And in the two containers, we have 25 red beads and we have 25 white beads in each. And the red beads are the ones that represent the dominant allele. So whenever we have a combination of red and any other color, we would have the dominant allele or the dominant gene being expressed in the phenotype. And the white beads are representative of the recessive gene or the recessive allele. Now, how we're going to be doing it is I'm going to be closing my eyes and picking from the container, and whatever I get, that is going to be the actual individual or the trait that is being passed off from this parent and the combinations together. Now, there are three possible combinations. Remember, the genotypes are always written with letters. So we usually use the dominant trait to represent what the letter is going to be. So if we're talking about tallness, tallness is dominant to shortness. And so the genotype would be capital T. And that means that you are tall. If we are going to represent the recessive allele, it will be the lowercase letter of the same, which was from the dominant gene. All right? So in the containers, we have red and white. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be representing the red on red as two uppercase letters, the red, white to represent an uppercase letter and a lowercase letter, and the white plus the white will represent two lowercase letters. So that's how we're going to be recording the information. But first, we're going to do the actual activity. All right? And remember, this one would mean that it is homozygous dominant because it has the uppercase letters and both alleles are the same. The red and white would represent heterozygous, And because there is a dominant allele present, then the phenotype is going to be red. And then there is the white on white, which is the double R's, which are small lowercase r's, and those would represent the recessive, homozygous recessive traits. All right, so we are going to just pick. I'm going to shake them and close my eyes, and I'm going to be picking. All right, so that one is red on white. All right, so we're going to disregard this one right here. That was an error. And we got red on white. So that's where that tally would go. Now I'm going to do another shuffle. And that's red and white. And remember, this red and white, which would be the heterozygous genotype, is the one that is going to have the two letters that are going to be different because it's hetero, and they are going to have one of the dominant alleles, which would be represented in the actual phenotype of the individual. So let's do like two more. So this is white on white, white on white. So we just do a tally right here. Red on white. And the last one for now, red on red. All right, so I am going to do all of them until I would have pulled 50 times and recorded that information in the tally table.
You're watching Homeschool 101.
All right, so now we have all the information about the beads and how many we were able to get in the combination. And if we look, we see the combination slash genotype. Uppercase R's, two of them, uppercase and lowercase r, and two lowercase r's. And if you notice, you would see the amount of times the combinations were selected. For the homozygous dominant, we got 11 in total. The heterozygous was 27, and the homozygous recessive was 12. And we look at the percentage. So we know that the percentage of red to white would be approximately 76 if we add those together. I'll give you a minute to add them. We add those together, we will get 76, and then the white would be 24. All right, and that is an indicator of the genotype, the phenotype, and how organisms can come together getting one particular trait from the father and one particular trait from the mother. Let us move on. All right, now with reference to what we spoke about in the beginning in terms of both parents being tall and one having a child that's short. Now, one of the ways that we can represent this information is with genetic diagrams. And there was this gentleman by the name of Mr. Punnett who created or developed this system where we can inevitably investigate or predict what two parents or what the offsprings of two parents could possibly be for particular traits or one trait in this instance. And so we have a square with two columns. Well, it's kind of a rectangle with two columns and two rows. And what goes on top is the genotype of the father. Remember, the genotype is written in letters, two letters, and the genotype of the mother on this side. All right, so now we have all the information that is required to actually work out the original statement, which was, how is it possible, or the original question, how is it possible that these two tall parents could produce this short individual? So let's move on. All right. Now, in order for them to produce this short individual, there must be two recessive alleles present in the genome of the parents. And we see here a prime example of how this is possible. Mom must have a recessive allele here, and dad must have a recessive allele as well. And so here is where our little friend from the beginning, our short friend from the beginning, could possibly be. Because if we notice, the small b's would represent the recessive trait. And so that means that would mean that he would be short. Now, in order to have the two recessive alleles in Johnny, which is who I'm calling him, there must be one recessive allele in each of his parents. So the genotype of each parent must be heterozygous, meaning that it has one dominant allele and one recessive allele, or one uppercase letter and one lowercase letter, as we see right here. All right, now how can we apply this information? How can we do investigations? We can do them right in our homes. You know, right now we're not allowed to go to many different places if we do not have to, but we can use our families and we can run investigations on them, but with their permission, of course. And one of the easiest ways to investigate genetic inheritance is by the tongue rolling mechanism. So there is a trait that determines whether we are able to roll our tongues or not. And the trait is represented with an R. Remember, we said that the genotype is always written with letters. So the genotype for this individual who is able to roll their tongue would approximately be RR or R, uppercase R and lowercase r, or two uppercase R's. And this individual is not able to roll her tongue. And so her genotype would more than likely be this. So how can you investigate this in your family? Well, you go to your mom and you say, Mom, I am trying to apply genetics in my daily life so that I can really understand the concepts. And so you ask, Mom, can you show me if you can roll your tongue? And if she can't roll her tongue, then you know definitely that her genotype would be this one. And if you go to your dad and he says, oh, darling, I can roll my tongue, you know that his genotype would more than likely be either of these two. And how can you know which one your dad is possibly? Well, you can go to your siblings. You can look at yourself and see if you are able to roll your tongue, and if your brother is able to roll his tongue, and if your sister is able to roll her tongue. So you can use the same Punnett square to plug in the genotypes of your mom and your dad, and you are going to be able to find out what your actual genotype could possibly be and those of your parents. So now we're going to try one. All right, so we're going to draw a Punnett square, and all it takes is and it's that simple. But when we're going to be drawing tables, you know we're going to be using a ruler and a pencil. Remember, we're preparing for CXC, and these are some criteria points that we need to be mindful of. So we're going to be drawing with a pencil and a ruler, and let's say your mom is not able to roll her tongue, but your dad is heterozygous for rolling his tongue. So we have two common R's, and we have a common and a capital R. So this one will be homozygous recessive, and this one at the bottom will be heterozygous because they're different. So we're going to plug them in, mom and dad. And so what we're going to be doing, we're going to actually be crossing them, like multiplying them. So we will say this R coming together with this R would give us an uppercase R and a lowercase r. And this R coming together with this one would give us two lowercase r's. This R coming together with this one will give us an uppercase and a lowercase, and this one will give us two lowercase letters. So if we look at the Punnett square, we can see that the possibility, remember, these are only possibilities. So every time a child is brought into the family, there is a 1 in, for this one, there's a 1 in 2 chance that the child would be able to roll their tongue under the heterozygous genotype, or not be able to roll their tongue under the homozygous recessive genotype. All right, so we will now label them non-tongue roller. And this one would be the same as well. And this one would be the heterozygous tongue roller. All right, so you can investigate that one in your home with the tongue rolling. That's a very easy one that you can actually do. So here you have another example, and this is how your tongue would actually look. The previous picture was an animation. This is an actual individual who is able to roll their tongue, and she more than likely would be either here or here. All right, so for homework and for practice in your spare time and in your exercise time when you are preparing for the CSEC examination, what you can do is you can do a bit of research in your family, not only on the ability to roll your tongue, but you can look at different things. You can look at the color of the family, the eyes in the family. Blue eyes most times are recessive to brown eyes. We can look at the texture of our hair, whether it's curly or straight. We know curly hair is dominant to straight hair. So you can do those investigations, and you can use the Punnett square to plug in the genotype of your parents, and then you will be able to actually see how the traits have been distributed within the 4 individuals. All right, that is it for today. We looked at the 6 terms, which is the phenotype and the genotype, and now we know what they mean. Genotype is the blueprint, and phenotype is what we actually see on the outside. We know what homozygous and heterozygous are. Homozygous means the alleles are the same, and heterozygous means the alleles are different. And dominant recessive, dominant traits are those that are seen in the phenotype because they dominate, and recessive traits are those that are only seen in the phenotype when there are 2 recessive alleles paired with them. That's it for today, students. I hope you were able to gather quite a bit of knowledge and understanding, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.
You've been watching Homeschool 101, a partnership between ABS Television and the Ministry of Education. Thank you for viewing this lesson. Join us again next time.